I love that little lady's voice. It's hilarious. So, all right, guys. So thanks so much for coming. Obviously, we like to do these little team chats every now and then. I always do them just real casual and based on request. It gives us a chance as a team to come together. I like to have it be interactive, as you guys know from the past ones. And that means that this isn't, I have a bit of an itinerary and some things that I want to go over, but I really want you to feel like if you have questions or things you want to talk about, I'm definitely going to be picking on people like a school teacher to speak up and share things. So be ready for that. And it gives us a chance to all come together, some of us, and go through some different topics, share different ideas. I absolutely want you also to share your ideas, right? We all have something to offer to the team. And so this isn't, you guys hear from me every single day. And this gives us an opportunity to also, we have some like really amazing team members on this, in this group. And I think it's important that we get a chance to learn from one another as well. So be prepared to share. I didn't have anyone actually write in or email me any specific topics, so I just went ahead and picked one big one that I think is really relevant and important right now, and that is about race planning at game day decisions and troubleshooting on the race course. And I'm actually super happy that Julie and Vu are here, because just being at St. George, and all of us have been doing some races. So it's going to give us a chance to, you know, have them really share as well when we get into, you know, talking about troubleshooting and making those game day decisions and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's the topic. So as you're starting to think about things and what you might want to offer to the team, I want everybody to have a voice and something that they share. So I'm going to start it out with we're going to do this in stages. You know, from working with me, whenever we have an event that comes up, I like to go through a race plan, right? Whether that be as simple for some people, that's just like, hey, I just want to go through, you know, some kind of an idea of how my warm-up's going to be, what I'm going to expect on the day, how I'm going to execute the course. And it can be really short and simple and a conversation. And some people like really detailed, you know, mapping it out minute, like hour to hour, minute to minute, and really having timelines to follow and really going through the details of it. So each person and what a race plan looks like is different, but I think it's important to do that, right? There's nothing sort of more careless than all this training that we put in and then to show up on the day and have no plan. Like, just, you know, I think every person here in our group couldn't even imagine something like that, right? Like but there are a lot of athletes out there that head to a race and they're just like, I don't know, I just was going to show up and do it, right? And so you'd be surprised if you talk to your peers and you talk to other groups that might be something that comes up, and you can even share your knowledge and your experiences and say, like, actually, if you go in with some idea of what you're going to do, this is really, really helpful. Breaking it into sections, that kind of stuff. Now, the first thing I want to say is what I look for, and personally myself, when I make a race plan for myself, the things I take into consideration obviously are the course, the conditions, my goals, and then it should be pretty obvious of what it is you're going to be able to do on that day based on your training over the last, you know, 6 months, 3 months, and in particular, the last 8 weeks going in. So when people say to me, you know, what are my paces and times? One of the things I try and educate all of you and help you with, and the reason I have you write the race plan and then me help you walk you through it, is so that you learn this process, that you can look through all of your key sessions, bikes, swims, runs, over the last 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months, and you should be able to pull from every session that you've done all of your numbers and really know what those are in different conditions, circumstances, training load, life stress load, and know right about where you fall all the time, and really know, okay, this is, come game day, this is what I've got to give. Not what you have your goal and what you want to do. And then you look at, okay, what's the temperature going to be? What are the conditions going to be? What is the course like? And then really, truly looking through. So when I help you with your race plans, I literally go through each one of your last key bike sessions, run sessions, a variety of the different ones at different efforts, look at paces, heart rates, how you felt afterwards, what happened on the back half of them, all of these details and notes. That's why we've talked about training logs before. You should be able to formulate pretty well how this day is going to go. Okay, you have a really good idea. So making a race plan shouldn't be something that when we say that the week of race going, let's make the race plan, like, oh no, I have no idea. It's just like school, right? You've been studying it all along. You've been doing practice tests all along. You've been building the building blocks and the pieces to the puzzle that come together for that day all along. And so you look at that and say, okay, this is what I should be able to do that day. Now, also taking into account if stuff comes up, right? So this is where I'm going to start, getting you guys to be interactive. So going into a race, oftentimes there is, things that come up right before a race, right? Like all of a sudden, well, we all have those phantom injuries that come up right before a race because we're not as mobile as usual and we're not doing as much and our mind starts to get to us. And it's like, you think you have a million injuries that you don't really have. But so that gets in there, but there is stuff that really does happen. And so Ben's already smirking because he knows I'm going to pick on him right away. And so the poor guy, Ben's been working his ass off with his running. His running's gone leaps and bounds forward in terms of what he's able to do. And he was gearing up towards a half marathon where everything was on track for him to absolutely PR and kick ass, and has been working hard for a long time for it. And right before it here, he got COVID, right? Correct. And it's like, man, shit happens. And it's like, God, both you, the athlete, and the coach go like, God damn it. And seriously, we're all friends here and we all know each other really well. So we got to be real, right? It's like, you want to say like, fuck.
I believe your response was, oh shit.
Yeah, like I did. He's like, oh, Marilyn. But like the immediate response is like, it's just where I feel like we're all close enough. It's like, God damn it, because everything that's gone into it and our hearts are filled into it. And we know these things. And then it's like, shit. So Ben, why don't you share with us, walk us through that a little bit and we've all been there, right? And, that's just the most
experience. So I tested positive 2 weeks before race day. I had been feeling symptoms for a couple days before then. So backed off training pretty significantly and had a lot of symptoms and was really fatigued. I had done some test runs leading into it, and heart rate was okay. It was fine. More than okay. It was normal. And I had done the antiviral treatment, and so my symptoms were certainly manageable. And created a race plan that was geared towards my old goal. I don't think I can do 1:30, but I'm trying like heck to get close to it. And so it was all geared towards running, for me fast. And I started off first 3 miles, 7:15 pace, but just felt that I didn't have the strength. And I just felt that, I had in the back of my head, I know people who really pushed exercise too fast, too hard with COVID, and some of them have long COVID. I don't know if those facts are related, but in the back of my mind, I just said, let's dial it way back. And so I finished the race. It was a slog. Somebody died at the finish line. The humidity was crazy during race day, and it was sort of carnage around the finish line. But I ended up running a half an hour slower than my goal. So that's what happened.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, right? Like, so sometimes this happens, right? Where we have a goal in mind and we've done all of the training and something comes up right before. And what I think that you did really, really well, Ben, is that a couple things. With every one of these experiences, we got to learn something, right? No matter what, because it works in the bank, and we know that at some point we're going to be able to draw from that, and it's going to be there. But the things that you did really well is that you never lost sight of, we'll just take it each day and see how it is, and I'll show up because I've worked really hard for this, and then I'll have the confidence and inner strength to make a game day decision, right? That's best for you in the situation, knowing that eventually we're going to get to actually use that fitness and reach the goal. But for a lot of people, sometimes we have to make a game day decision before the event if it's just like an absolute no, right? And sometimes we have to just kind of go, okay, day by day, we'll just take it all. How is it? How do I feel? What does everything look like? Because how many times have we seen where someone goes through the exact same scenario that you just went through? They show up on race day. Sarah's not here tonight because it's Larry's birthday, but she had this happen right before her last race. Her hamstring was like a bit of a niggle for about 3 weeks going into the race. And we managed it, set the race plan, and she did the race and didn't feel her hamstring one bit, had the race of her life, absolutely kicked butt, and the hamstring went away. It was like an Ironman fixed her hamstring. So you really never know, right? And I've certainly seen that even with people. Obviously, you wouldn't put someone at risk if they've got like a high fever or deep chest cough, or there was like indicators that this was going to be really risky. But you say, let's give it our best shot, see what we show up with, and then just make a mature game day decision based on what is right at the time. And I think as experienced athletes and mature athletes that we all are, that takes a lot of guts, and that's the right way to handle it. And every top athlete has had to go through that at some point. And then you just, as hard as it is, you walk away from those experiences and go, well, the work's in the bank and I'll get to make use of that at some point. I'll recover, build back up, and get to do that. So thanks for sharing.
The only thing I would add is I've been in my training, I've noticed, and my performance has really suffered when I've been under fueled. And so at 3 miles, when I started to feel sluggish, I, as planned, took a gel, and I didn't really pack it in until I recognized that the gel wasn't going to get me there.
Right.
So it kind of reminded me, I had Marilyn in the back of my head as saying, start the work, see how you feel, make sure you fuel, give it a chance. And it wasn't there.
Right. And so even troubleshooting as you went properly, right? Like maybe I'm just a little bit underfueled. So those are really, honestly, in terms of athletic performance and just day-to-day life performance, those are really important things, right? You're able to logically think through things. You know the work that you've done, you know the course, you know the circumstances of maybe what's happened before going in, and you're able to just sort of stay on course, give it a chance, and then make good game day decisions. And I think that that's really, really important, right? I mean, so many people really lose themselves in emotion and they're not able to do that. And that's, that can be the difference between really, really great races and, even just great athletic development or development as a person from sport, and people who aren't able to, they sort of get stuck and you see them go on a downward spiral. So we also had, Jennifer, Vu, and Julie were in St. George, and, we looked at a course like that, and I'll share a little bit and I'll let Jennifer share a bit more, is that, the days before the race, everyone was going crazy about different wheels and, the descents and the wind and all of that stuff. And we went out on the courses, athlete and coach, and she rode the descent with her. It was nearly an 808 front, and I was watching her, and she's going pretty fast. So she's a good descender, but up in her hoods and not in her aero bars. And I had said to her, absolutely not go with the 404 on the front. You're going to be able to tuck down really low and boogie down that hill and make up a lot of time on that downhill. And so, that was, like I say, equipment decisions and game day decisions that were very specific for her and allowed her to pass. Jennifer, how many people did you pass on that downhill?
All of them. There was only one guy on the first descent that passed me. Oh, wait. Okay. It was, 50. Yeah. Both times. Yeah. It was everybody. I was riding with 5 women and I never saw them again after the first descent.
Right. And so that was very specific to you. Now, on the flip side, Julie, she has ridden Kona. She's real strong athlete. You're both really strong, but just a different build, different type of athlete, different in her aero bars, has ridden a lot of descents in with that equipment. And so for Julie, this is where, when we think about equipment or we think about game day decisions, what's best for each athlete individually. She said to me, everyone's talking about switching wheels because of the wind. She said, I'm not going to. And I said, no, you don't need to. So completely different conversation from one athlete to the other. Same course, same day, same, we're there at the World Championships. They're going to be descending down the same descent. And we had 2 completely different conversations the days before the race on our race planning and our equipment. For Jennifer, the fastest thing for her that day was going to be to have the 404 in the front, tucked down, be real low, put it in a big gear and zoom down that hill. For Julie, having the 808 on was going to be the fastest thing for her. And she's very comfortable on that wheel, was able to stay on her aero bars and ride the descent really fast. So these are the kinds of things when you're doing your race planning. And the reason I'm bringing these examples up is because there's always a lot of other voices out there, right? Like, how many people were messaging you, Jennifer, about your wheel choice the days before?
Oh my God, I think I had like 20 Instagram messages asking why I was going to put a 40 on the front and not an 808.
Yeah,
and I was the only one in aero and then descent, the only one that made a wheel choice like that. Everybody else had the race wheels on and they were in their hoods.
Right. So as I talk about making,
I wasn't in my hood, just for the record. I was in my aero bars.
Yeah, that's what I said. Julie's in her aero bars, but Julie's also done Kona and descended down Havi with the cutouts in the wind with her 808 and is totally fine. So we knew, and we've trained together a lot. I've known Julie like 15 years now, so I knew that she would be absolutely fine with that wheel. And so when it was the conversation of, for her is like, no problem, we don't need to worry about changing that wheel. So different people, different athletes, same course, but completely different conversations. And so the reason we talk about this stuff is making those race plans. When you look at, like I say, conditions, courses, your own history, your own athletic background, what you've been doing in your build, you have to draw a lot of confidence from that, right? And be able to make these decisions. All right, so I want to just move forward a little bit, and we're going to go like one by one here a bit. Let's talk about things that can go wrong and things that you can do to troubleshoot them. So the swim, okay? I made a little list here, and then I want you to all think about different things that have happened to you and something you might want to share. And you can put up your little hand if you have suggestions, experiences, or different things. My list was things on the swim that can go wrong are rough starts on the swim, right? So we talked about this. Different types of races have different dynamics. Rolling starts, if it's an international field, it can be different in terms of how aggressive it is. Beach starts, run-in starts, cold water swims, right? Vu can talk a little bit about this. So hot, warm water and overheating. So rough starts has a play that you have to troubleshoot. You're losing your goggles and having them popped off by somebody else, your goggles fogging up, wetsuit getting unzipped by aggressive competition, that can happen, or something like that. Sighting can become difficult with sun, or just simply the sheer confusion of how many swim caps are out there, buoys and everything. I know a lot of swim races I've been in where I look up, it's just a sea of buoys and caps and boats, and you can't even tell which one you're supposed to go to because there's so much water personnel out there. Swim cap comes off, or overheating in the water, those kinds of things. Cold water hitting your ear and causing a little bit of like dizziness or even vertigo. So these are all things that I know all of you, if we're aware of these situations and we know going in, hey, these things could possibly happen. And so we don't bury our head in the sand and say, okay, none of these things, we're just going to plan for a perfect swim. If we're aware of all these different things that can happen, we can have a plan on how to troubleshoot them, right? So go ahead and anyone throw up their hand on ways that you have troubleshooted any one of those things that may have happened to you, or different things that you think may have happened and you can share. Julie?
Well, I mean, the first one is goggles, which this goes back to competitive swimming, where we used to have to, in practice, like do dive starts without our goggles and race whatever your distance was. So that was like a possibility. But at Oceanside 2 years ago in the waves, I had my goggles ripped off my head and gone in the surf. And you have no choice. And it's just, it's salt water and you just swim. Like there's nothing you can do other than, kind of panic and then realize that, okay, it's only water, you're going to be fine. And thank God I wear one contact and I stayed in the whole time. So, but that was something that I've had a lot of experience with, is swimming without goggles, because it can certainly happen.
Yeah, and I find also little things like, this might be second nature to some of you, but some of you might not be aware of it, is that if you put, when you race, put your swim goggles on first and then your cap over top, right? That's going to help keep them on as well. And you can even pull your cap down a little bit tighter over the top of your goggles, and that really secures them in place. I know that I've taught some of you this, and I hope that I've taught most of you this, the baby shampoo trick, where there's all kinds of defogging stuff out there that works really well, but honestly, baby shampoo, I feel, works best. You put a really tiny, thin little layer on, and then make sure you rinse them out really well, obviously, so it gets shampoo in your eyes the whole way. And then don't touch them again and put them on your face. And that, I find, actually is the best defogging for goggles of any of those, real fancy brands that you can use. So having them under your cap helps prevent them from getting ripped off and them coming off in an aggressive start, as well as the defogging with the baby shampoo. So those are some tricks and tips with that.
Funny, because the day before we did a practice swim, I had my goggles under my cap and my cap came off in the waves. And so that was my last minute call. Would I rather lose my cap or my goggles? And I'm not neither, but I don't like to swim in two caps because it gives me a headache, but that's the way to do it. But yeah, I was all ready, and it was just, the cap just slid right off my head.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, shit, what if I lose my cap and my goggles? Then I'm super fucked. So.
Oh my God. My good friend Justin Dare, he lost his swim cap one time in a swim. And when the cap came off, at this point, he always liked to wear his hair a little longer, and his cap came flying off, and then his hair kept flopping in his eyes, and he lost the main swim group because of his hair. And he swore from that day on, he would never do another Ironman without shaving his head. And he shaved his head for every single Ironman he ever did after that, because his hair cost him the whole race. He lost the front swim group because of his hair, and that was it. So like, that's an extreme example, right? You lose your swim cap. I would better have a tight ponytail or braids or something if you got long hair, or have your hair short enough that kind of stuff doesn't happen. So yeah, any other? So one of the main things that you see two main things you see be a problem, actually, that you have to make real serious game day decisions, are when water's really hot, how you handle that. Okay, like you literally need to recognize that you're overheating and adjust your pace. Now, it's against the rules to take your cap off. You can get a penalty for removing your swim cap, but if you're really overheating, I've seen plenty of people do it. The main thing is, if it's a warm swim and you start to overheat, you want to slow down. You don't want to say, man, it's really hot in here and I'm starting to feel like I'm overheating, and just keep drilling it on the swim. Okay, because overheating in the water, I've seen as good a swimmers as Andy Potts overheat on a 70.3 and sit down on the curb afterwards and have to DNF the whole race because his heart rate just shot up to nearly max and he overheated, and that was it, game over. So if you get into a situation in a swim where you are overheating, have the confidence to recognize that and slow yourself down and let yourself cool off a little bit. That's really important. The other extreme opposite end of that is when the water is very cold, right? And we saw this in St. George, and Vu experienced this personally himself, where you jump in, and one way to prepare for it, you can do 2 swim caps, you can wear earplugs, you can do all the things, good wetsuit, but if they allow you to get in a little bit before and get your face wet and get your lungs opened up and get used to that cold water, so that when you hit it, it's not such a shock, that's helpful. But even if you do that, there is some times where you hit that cold water And I think Vu experienced it and Jennifer experienced it as well at this race, where it takes your breath away so badly that it literally stops you in your tracks, right? Now, I don't know if either one of you want to share a little bit of your experience with that on how, I mean, Jennifer, you were able to troubleshoot it and have it wasn't the swim that you were prepared for and that we know you're capable of, but you were able to troubleshoot it, get through the swim and still have a fantastic day, right? And so is that like, talk a little bit about the cold water, like running in and it hits you and what happened there for you?
Yeah, I was surprised. It's not like it was my first cold water swim. I'm used to it. I think it was the combination. I think I ran in too fast, and then it was a combination of that elevated heart rate, and then the cold water. It's like your lungs constrict, and then usually they'll like release maybe like 100 or 200 yards, and mine just didn't. And I actually had to like do like a breaststroke and like exhale like really hard out so I could inhale more. And I had to do that maybe for the first 500 yards and slow way down and get my rhythm. And then I was able to pick it back up after that. But the time damage had been done by that point. But I was able to keep swimming. Like I had a couple of breaths, keep swimming, and finally got under control. But yeah, it was a surprise. I had ever had that severely happen to me before.
Yeah. And same for you, right, Vu? I mean, you, same thing. You didn't have the swim we know you're capable of and the swim that you wanted, but you were able to troubleshoot enough to be able to still complete the swim. And so, and yours was much more severe. I mean, you ended up with having a little bit of that situation where, it feels like you're getting a little bit of water in the lungs, that kind of thing. And really, had to make, like Ben, really smart game day decisions like, okay, I got to just calmly handle this, settle down and finish this to the best of my ability. So
yeah, I thought I told you the first day when I did practice, I thought I had a panic attack, but it turns out I have this like, I don't know, when it's cold weather, it's like lung inflammation called pleurisy. And I didn't think it was the case, but it was just amplified. And I got in about like 100 yards in, I'm like, I just can't breathe. It never happened before. And I had to start just treading water, and there was a guy on the surfboard. I almost like should I reach out to him kind of thing. And it was the saddest sight. Like everybody was just swimming away, and I was there like by myself. It was crazy. I'm just like, what do I do? And I'm just like, I just got to slow down and just time my breath with my stroke. And I was like 30 minutes slow. It was like a 2-hour swim. It was horrible.
But that's the thing is like those things happen in races, right? I mean, we prepare and we get really fit, and it's the ability to say, okay, you can recognize like this sucks. Everybody's swimming away from me. Like, okay, yeah, this isn't what I prepared for. This sucks. But, you were able to take care of yourself, get yourself situated, and able to get into a rhythm and complete the swim. And so that says a lot about you as an athlete. In my mind as a coach, anyone who's able to do that, their great performance is right around the corner. If I have an athlete, when those things happen, all hell breaks loose and they just start to domino and spiral into a really negative place, that's going to take a lot more coaching to get that athlete back into a good place to be able to perform well, right? But the athlete that's able to say, all right, this is happening to me right now. I need to make a really smart game day decision for me. And then I have the strength to carry on with whatever it is that I'm working with. That athlete, we get back to training, we get back to work, we get another opportunity to do it. And the good performance is right around the corner. So, and I've seen that time and time again with 20 years of coaching. I mean, that is really, really consistent on the two ends of the spectrum of those things. So have confidence in that. All right, let's move on to the bikes. So list I made on the bike, the obvious things that can happen: flats, extreme winds, crashes, mechanicals, drafting from other people that you have no control over, pacing, missing your special needs or a chaotic special needs if you're in an Ironman, aid stations maybe not functioning properly. All of these things can happen to us out there on the bike. Now, all of us on my program, we train enough and hard enough and do enough miles. And honestly, my old coach taught me this. It was like, there isn't anything that's going to happen to you on race day that you haven't experienced in training, because we train so much and we do so much on a week-to-week, year-to-year basis that by the time you get to a race, there isn't a whole lot of things that you haven't encountered in training. The issue becomes is that when we get into a race, we think for some reason magically, like we've got the shield around us, like nothing's going to happen. It's going to go perfect, right? And unfortunately, we're still in the real world, and it's just like any other training day. These things happen. Kelly, I want you to share with us. Kelly had a really kick-ass race not that long ago. He won. Kelly's the example. He doesn't need to practice to swim.
No.
He doesn't swim, and then he goes and kicks ass. So, aside from that, he on the bike, same thing. I'm so proud of this team because each one of you, these examples, just does the right thing every time, and it allowed him to still win his race. So tell us a little bit about what happened to you on the bike, your race.
Yeah, so I got on my bike. You ride out of a little park in this Olympic distance course, and so yeah, you're around other people going kind of slow. And then I got out on the road, and I pressed real hard on the cranks, right? And I hear a squeak, and just went on, and a couple more louder squeaks, and I reach to see if I could adjust the brake because maybe the brake's rubbing, and it's not that. I saw a driveway up ahead, and I pulled over, and the tire was rubbing against the back of the seat post. I had test ridden my bike and with the race wheels and everything, but yeah, it wasn't right. So, I just took a second. I loosened the skewer. I pulled the wheel back a quarter of an inch or so and tightened the skewer down and got back on my bike, and on I went. And I can get upset more easily than I ought to, but this stuff that we're doing right here, Marilyn, this is huge, because I'd heard you before talk about, plans don't always go right. Things happen in races, and you just deal with it. And I was pretty calm, and it was okay after that. And I just rode hard, and the rest of the day was fine. And it was amazing. But I really do think that, these talks that we do, like, we don't dwell on stuff that can go wrong. Sure, tonight's session is about that kind of, but it makes all the difference if you just say, okay, what are we going to do here, and do it, and then get back on and go. So, and
that's the thing. It's so cool because, our sport, we have to expect it's out in the elements, right? We're out in wind, heat. We've got a lot of equipment. Oh my gosh. I think show jumping is the only sport I know. Well, there's others. I mean, there's so much equipment, right? And there's so much equipment, and we're out in the elements. We cover a lot of ground. There's a lot of other factors that come into play that we have no control over, right? Like an aid station. We roll up an aid station. You got volunteers. Most of them have no idea. They've never done it before. We're moving really fast. You got other riders. Some have a lot of experience. Some have no experience. Some people haven't even been out on their bikes off their trainers. And so you have all of these moving parts that, as an athlete, once you're out there and you're going, and all you're thinking about is, this is the goal that I've set out to do and work really hard for. And it's hard sometimes to remember that there's all of these other things that come into that day. And we just have to have these really important conversations to be prepared for them. And it really is, like you say, Kelly, it's just having the conversation, right? I mean, talk about it, have a plan for it, be aware that these things do happen. And then, we've each heard from one another how we handle them. And it doesn't always even happen in racing. I mean, Christy, you're at camp and she shows up. She's such a superstar with the right attitude. This was an absolute, glowing example. She shows up for the bike one day and she goes, my bike just got stolen out of my car. So here, I mean, we all know how expensive these bikes are. And she's a million miles away from home, and she shows up and she's at a triathlon camp where she needs that equipment and it's gone. So, and Christy, she just handled it absolutely the right way, the way that she could. And, ended up being, we got her a bike and she finished the camp and she had a great experience and got stronger. But Christy, I mean, talk to us about, you literally have the best attitude. I mean, anybody else would have been flipping out and their camp would have been done. It's like, well, I have 5 kids. This is the worst that happened to me.
This is not, it just, what are you going to do? You just got to make the best of it. And the bike ended up being great. It was fine.
We got her a little loaner bike, and now she has a new bike, which is really nice. But that's an example outside of race conditions that we, we practice these kinds of things, and we do just have these important conversations, and we feed it off each other as a team as well. I think success breeds success, and knowing that these things happen to everyone and how we handle them as a team, then that allows us to all perform really well. I mean, in St. George there, Julie, you, big kudos to you. We can't help but mention, but winning the world championships by an hour, pretty incredible. Big clap, hats off. And so, one thing, when I saw her with about 5 miles to go, and she was like, man, I'm really, really hurting. And I said, it was basically a long downhill to go home. And I said, I don't care. Take 2 salt pills, a cup of water. I don't care if you have to roll down this hill. You got to win this thing. And so, but able to just make decisions all day based on her competition, the heat, the conditions, the terrain, that kind of thing. I think it's, when we have someone a part of the team that was able to be that successful at such an important event, I definitely want to hear from you as far as some of the things that you maybe like summarize the most important things for you on that day that relate to this topic we're talking about tonight.
I mean, I think it's the way you started with the whole call, with the planning, because I mean, for years and years and years, my mantra is I can't, I don't do well in the heat. And knowing it was going to be a hot, sorry, my dogs are playing with a squeaky toy. It was knowing that it's a make or break, and there is like really no option, and shit does go wrong. So, I mean, to give you a sense, I took 20,000 milligrams of sodium in the day of the race and drank like over 70 ounces of fluid a day on the bike. That's almost like 2 big bottles an hour. So it's like a shuffle of, and because it was going to be so hot, I froze my 3 bottles for special needs, because I carry out most of my own stuff. And I got to special needs and I'd put them in freezer bags, and I had 3 frozen solid bottles. Like, it's 100 fucking degrees outside. They are rock solid. And I'm standing there looking at this lady going, one, I'm supposed to dump in my front Aero bottle, and it's solid. The second one is so big, it won't fit in my rear cage. And I'm just looking at her like, what, like, do you have a microwave? Like, what the fuck am I getting? I'm off my bike. I'm losing time on the bike. Like, and I can't even like think. And so I just dropped the bottle, and I grabbed like 2 bottles of Gatorade. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and she took it out of the bag and handed it to me. So I'm riding out of transition with like frozen bottles, because there's no aid station there. So I have 1 frozen bottle, nothing to drink, and a fucking sandwich and no bag. And the last aid station was literally like 5 miles ago. So now I have nothing. I have a sandwich and an ice block, and I'm thinking, shit, this is like going sideways. Then I don't realize what bottles I've lost. So I spent the next 10 miles, like, I shoved the sandwich down my top, which don't ever do that. And then was holding the bottle like it would melt, like losing my mind. And then I'm doing hippie math, like I call it Iron Man math. Like, okay, 2 bottles, was it the bottles that had 240 calories in it and 3,000 milligrams of sodium? And I'm just like, fuck, I don't even like know. I just like, so that was like the hardest kind of thing. But thank God I carry tons of extra salt. Like, I have like so many salt pills in my bento box. It was like a salt lick at the end. I would just like bite off like a chunk of them because I sweat so much. And so that was like my only sort of crisis during the day. And then it was just like, stay cool, stay, do whatever you can. So I think that, I mean, that was on the fly sort of a thing. And then on the Converse, I get to the run, and I ran with a Camelback, which in transition, I'm like, shit, should I run with this? I'm like, fuck, like everything I own is in it. So if I didn't, I would have had nothing again. And it was still, because it was in the shade, I had wrapped it in freezer bags. So it was actually a cold 2-liter thing on my back. And that worked out really well. And my stuff in special needs on the bike, they handed me a squishy bottle that was literally so hot it burned my hands. Like, it was like a hot, it came out of the microwave. That was the opposite. So like I threw that away. So, you know, there was a lot of on the fly kind of thinking for me, because it's all about nutrition. And it was just, I'm just deathly afraid that, you know, someone, and I mean, Jennifer and Boo, you could see, I mean, people were falling over on the course. So you're just like, if you fall over and lay down, you're going to lose. Someone's going to run you over. So, yeah, I mean, that was probably, for all the planning and nutrition, I had it down to the milligram. I mean, and I like it just, thank God I know the ingredients of Gatorade Endurance. Like that was just, so I knew I could get when I needed. And I have salt everywhere, like special needs in my pockets everywhere. Cause without that, then I'm dead. So.
And it really is, it's, you know, it's being prepared, but being able to adapt on the fly, right? So like Eddie was at the race as well, and he thought his day was over when he started the run. He was so hot and overheating so badly. He literally he stopped at an aid station and stood there for a couple minutes and cooled himself off with ice and water, had a bunch of, you know, a bit of nutrition and just cooled off, and then trotted off nice and slowly and just made sure his core temperature was down. And then in the end, he ended up qualifying for Kona. You know, he had the race of his life. He ran really, really well, and was making that game day decision. Had he just carried on and said, oh, well, I'm hot, you know, I'll just press on and press through, it's chances are he would have been one of those people laying on the side of the road. Right. And so it's having the confidence to, like Kelly said, pull over and fix the squeak and then calmly move ahead. Right. Julie knew exactly what she needed to be successful because she's practiced this in training. She knows exactly what she needs. She's, you know, dialed it in. She knows the ingredients of everything out there and is able to, okay, all these things are going wrong, but you can make game day decisions while you're out there. And it's so important. Right. And that's like, even on the run, I mean, the list that I made for you guys on the run, the things that you might, I know I've personally experienced: overheating, cramping, chafing. Man, I've had some chafing slow me down on the run. That can be, you know, really tough. Your pacing, obviously, nutrition we've talked about. And then the other one that can be really, you know, something to manage is blisters, right? And so we've all experienced those things as well. And it's, like I say, this is just a conversation of, let's talk about the hard stuff that can happen out there and how we manage them and what it is that you do about them. I had one year at Ironman Canada, I was in 4th place, and I had a blood blister on the bottom of my foot. The arch of my foot was the entire arch of my foot, because I had these really hard orthotics that weren't great. And about, I don't know, halfway through the marathon, I'm talking the entire arch of my foot turned into a blister. And it was like this, almost like the size of a sponge, and it turned into a blood blister. And I thought, if this thing bursts, I'm going to be crippled. And I had managed my foot strike in my run and managed to finish in 4th. And I was on crutches for 2 weeks after that race because of how severe the blood blister was. But these things happen, right? I mean, you have to be prepared for these things to happen in races. And how do you just keep managing them and keep racing as hard as you possibly can while you're out there, right? So,
well, one of the poor planning things I did is I had done my, you know, I had new shoes and I'd done a couple of runs in them. So I knew they were fine, model I had before. But the mistake I made was I put my speed laces in and only did like an hour run, and when it was 60 degrees and not 100 degrees. And so about 13 miles into the run, my foot was cut off at the top. And so I had to stop, and I loosened the speed laces. So then I spent the next 13 miles with my heel sliding, and mine was not a blood blister, but it, like, you know, when it goes from super painful to you can feel it squishy, and you're like, if this thing pops, then, so my left calf was so fucked up because I'm running literally on my toe, because I was like, if I don't put my heel down, the blister probably won't pop. But that was my fault, like just dumb ass not planning.
it happens, right?
Yeah.
So I would like anyone, I know different, we've all had different things that have come up in races. And so anyone who, we've had a few of you who haven't had a chance to say anything yet. And I would like each one of you who hasn't said anything yet to share with us that one thing that's happened to you in a race that you're like, oh, this happened, and this is how I troubleshooted it. And this is how I was able to carry on and continue to have a great race. And I think then what happens as a team, if everyone's heard, oh, that happened to Maria during her race, and this is what she did, and she fixed it. That's going to arm us all with this huge tool bag by sharing these stories with one another. If that comes up for you in a race, we're going to remember, like Kelly said, we're going to remember these conversations and say, okay, this is what I need to do in that situation and be able to carry on. So go ahead. We'll start with Winter. Why don't you go ahead and share something? It can be in training or racing, and I'll pick you guys out so that you aren't worried about when you have to talk, and just share real quickly one thing that in either training or racing that's happened that you successfully troubleshooted.
Well, the race I'm about to do in a couple of weeks, the first time I ever did it was last year, and I did not prepare for the heat, and I was sweating like ridiculously bad. So I cramped up really bad during the bike part. It's a duathlon, it's a sprint duathlon. I cramped so bad, I had to get off the bike and walk up. Like, it wasn't even a steep hill. It's just that I was cramping so bad, I couldn't really pedal anymore. So I had to walk part of the bike up the hill. And then I literally stood there and stretched my legs out for a good while. And then finally I went downhill and finished the bike part and finished the second part of the run, which was rough because my legs were cramping so hard. I kept looking at the side of the road thinking, that bush looks nice. That bush looks nice. I could just lay there. I was like, no, I really don't want to lay in a bush. No, let's just keep walking. Because at this point I couldn't run anymore. I was so cramped up. I couldn't run. I was just walking. And then I was like, I don't think I'm going to die in Callaway Gardens. So let's just keep walking. And finally I finished the race. So that taught me not to, and the problem is that I had food on me and stuff, but I didn't want to stop to eat it for some reason. I was like, no, just keep going, just keep going. I should have stopped to eat. But I did stop to drink at this one aid station, but I'm never gonna just keep pushing, even though I'm dehydrated, ever again. That was the longest mile of my life. The last mile was just so freaking long, and every bush looked great. I was thinking I could camp there. Like, I got a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I'll be good for a couple of while. But yeah, I have to hydrate. I get so dehydrated easily. So it's something I had to learn how to do, and to train more outside, which is definitely what I do more now.
Nice.
Because it gets so hot and humid in Georgia. It's crazy.
Oh.
Melissa, you just did Ironman Texas and won your age group, qualified for Kona, decided going to wait to go to the World Championships, which is a great decision for you. Like I said, every athlete makes different decisions on what's best for their career, but it's still to be noted that you qualified, which is awesome. Congrats. Won her age group, had an awesome performance. And, we're talking about troubleshooting in races tonight. You didn't really, you had that race of your life. You were just like, you're going to have a lot more of those, but you were like, yeah, everything just went great. So, that's something to say, wow.
No, everything didn't go great.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's yours on your bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have electronic shifting and it's never had a problem, but of course race day has a problem where it would shift on its own and either go completely in the only thing that would change would be the gears up front, the big chainring or small chainring, and it would be in the hardest gear on the cassette. And so I would just keep trying to shift, and when it first happened it was 5 miles into the bike, and then it was just a matter of what do I do? I don't know how to troubleshoot this. Batteries were all good. I charged all the batteries, and I just kept pushing buttons and hoping that something would work. And it did. It finally went back to changing. And then probably 3 miles later, it happened again. And I found out finally that it was a shifter on my aero bar end. And if I avoided that, the shifting was fine. So I lost a few minutes on the bike and probably cost the overall win. Damn it. But it was good. It was good. I think I hydrated really well on the bike because a lot of people didn't expect the wind to be quite as bad as it was on race day. And I pretty much, my goal for the whole bike was just to set myself up for a really good run. And I hydrated, took some water at every aid station, stayed on my nutrition plan, and had a best run I've had in ever. So it was a good day.
Yeah, and that really says something, right? I mean, you're stuck in your biggest gear and
Yeah.
still able to have the best run of your life. I mean, these are examples that we're talking about where another athlete might have panicked or let that get them to a point where, you know, it lets their whole day domino backwards. And, you know, you did such a great job there.
Yeah. I told myself, well, if I can't shift, then I'm just going to do this whole ride in a big gear. That's it.
You're training, right?
That's right. I've been training for this. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, Christina, you just did the bridge to bridge, huge swim. She sent video, and when she jumped into that cold water in just her swimsuit, I literally went, oh God. I was like, I would like to do that with her, but not a chance in hell would I get that cold. I'm sorry. I did the Waikiki one because it was warm, but not that. So tell us a little bit about, you know, share with us one thing that is connected to this topic tonight with your day there.
Yeah. So it was not actually as bad as I thought the cold was going to be. So it was 53 at the start, and then 55 at the end, 54 overall. So it was, I was prepared to be like, oh my fucking God, this is like the worst thing ever, and I'm going to die when I hit the water. And so I had mentally, basically, I had psyched myself up that this was going to be, because this is the longest cold water swim without a wetsuit that I've ever done. And it was sort of a trial run, because one of the things that I want to do over the next year or so is an actual like proper marathon swim, which has to be in under 60 degrees, and it has to be basically you're allowed suit, cap, and goggles. You're not even allowed to wear 2 caps. So it's, you know, very, very regimented. And I was like, I need to do something to make sure that I can actually handle that cold, that cold of water. And so I basically, one of the things I did in preparation was trying to mentally think about, you know, that, okay, this is going to be really, really bad, and try to psych myself up for thinking about the worst possible cold I could imagine, and how I was going to react to that. And one of the things that I always do when I get into really cold water is, a lot of people, your instant reaction is to like breathe out as soon as you hit the water. And if you can hold your breath for like 5 to 10 seconds. And so one of the things that I always do is I take a huge breath, and then I try to take in a little bit more air, and then try to hold my breath for those first couple strokes before I breathe out. And that seems to help with this whole, and then, you know, you're kind of like, and then everybody's done it, even with the wetsuit on, I've done that a few times, like the hyperventilating. So, so that was one of the things that I did. And then one of the things towards the end is my friend, one of Julie's athletes, actually, Megan, was swimming it with me. And about a mile from the end, she started struggling. And so we had to kind of make this sort of game time decision about if she was going to get out, if she was going to get back on the boat. And so then it was like, okay, I've got to figure out, like, what am I doing? Do I need to get out? Like, do I keep going? Like, what are we doing? And they're like, okay, well, we have to stop the guide boat because we got to get her on the boat. And so it's like, okay, well, you keep swimming. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm out here in the middle of the bay. Like, and I'm swimming, and now I'm swimming through, and it's an open waterway. It's an open shipping lane, right? And so there was like for a minute there was a moment of panic, and I was like, oh, do I get back on the boat? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. And I know where I'm going. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep swimming where they told me, and just try to sight like as much as I can, and try to keep going until they're going to catch up to me. Like, they know where I am. They can see me. It's going to be okay. And so it was, but it was a few minutes of, them like stopped and me just going. And so I felt very vulnerable for about 3 or 4 minutes there, but.
That's awesome. And it's like, I think that word, what you just said right there, is really something we can all relate to. We've been in like Vu mentioned earlier, positions in a race where we feel, that's such a perfect word, vulnerable, right? We've prepared and prepared and prepared, and then something goes in a direction that we weren't quite expecting. And then it's having this bag of tools and information, like Julie said, she knew what Gatorade Endurance had in it. And so she was able to troubleshoot, right? Kelly knew, he heard a squeak, and instead of just hammering forward and continuing on and having a really tough day, he was able to recognize it, hear that sound, and pull over and fix the problem. I have a close friend and who's a professional athlete at St. George, and she had a really, really tough day, had convinced herself she should retire during the race. The day was so hard on her. And then afterwards realized exactly the same thing that happened to Kelly. Her wheel was rubbing the whole way. And so her bike was way slower and it really wrecked her legs the run. She was ready to retire from the sport versus just hearing the squeak, pull over and fix it, right? So you can see how these kinds of awarenesses, what's going on with my conditions, what's happening around me, what have I prepared for, what is my tool bag filled with to be able to adapt, realize what's going on, make really calm decisions that are best for you. Sometimes they're really positive and they end in a great result. And sometimes you have to make a game day decision that's like, it's not my day today, but my day is coming, right? And I think these are all really, really important things to be able to handle and mentally prepare yourself for as competitive athletes, or even just in general, even if you're not looking at it from a competitive athlete standpoint of view, just for life, really. So I know I didn't get a chance to ask each and every one of you to share, but I like to stay on time for respect of everybody's time for the evening. So the people that didn't get to share, Maria, Kristen, Caroline, if there's things that you would like to add to the conversation, I'm going to, and unless anyone completely objects, I'm going to post this chat in the WhatsApp, the team WhatsApp, and go ahead and listen to it. The other team members can listen to it, and you can add any additional comments, Christine, Christy, anyone who didn't, if there's more that anyone wants to add to the conversation and say, we'll go ahead and add it there. And I really appreciate you guys showing up. Like, I do think that just having these conversations and sharing what, what's happened to you, like, hey, this happened to me and this is how I handled it. We all get just a little bit better. So I appreciate you, one, showing up, but your willingness to share your experiences and how you handled things. And so we can all get a little bit better and a little bit stronger. So really good stuff. And as always, these team chats, I let them be athlete driven. So if you like them, let me know. We can do them once a month. If you're like, I don't have time and we don't want to do them, we can pop them up whenever is convenient for the team. And as always, in the group WhatsApp, you just let me know that stuff and we make time for them when the request is there. So awesome stuff tonight, everyone. Thank you so much. I love seeing your faces. I love having us all connect, and we will talk to you all soon. Cheers, guys. Thank you.